Have you ever stood in the middle of a room and suddenly forgotten why you were there? Or perhaps you fumbled for a familiar word, one that used to come so easily? These little moments, often brushed off as just getting older, may be trying to tell us something deeper. Because memory loss isn't always a lightning strike. Sometimes it's a slow, quiet unraveling. But what if I told you that scientists have just uncovered something simple, something surprisingly within your control, that could cut your risk of dementia by 15% in just a few years? And no, it's not a brain game. It's not a supplement. It's not a fancy new treatment. It's your blood pressure. In a study of over 34,000 people, researchers found that lowering your systolic blood pressure to below 130 didn't just protect the heart, it protected the mind. Those who followed this one change were significantly less likely to develop dementia. And the earlier they started, the greater the protection. This isn't just a number on a machine. It's a window into your brain's future. Because the truth is, high blood pressure silently damages the tiny vessels that feed your brain. It doesn't happen all at once. It builds up. And then one day, your memory begins to slip, and it feels like it came out of nowhere. In today's video, we're going to break down exactly how blood pressure affects your brain, why 140 is no longer safe, how you can take control without medication, and what foods, habits, and changes can literally defend your memory for years to come. So whether you're 60, 70, or pushing 80, this message is for you, because your mind matters, your memories matter. And what you do today could determine whether you remember tomorrow. Type 1 in the comments if this message speaks to you, or 0 if you're still deciding. Let's get started. Let's move to number 1. Why your brain needs healthy blood flow, the hidden science. Your brain might only weigh about 3 pounds, but it's the most demanding organ in your entire body. Even when you're sitting still, even while you sleep, it's consuming over 20% of the oxygen and nutrients you take in. Every thought you have, every memory you reach for, every name, every face, depends on one thing: blood flow. Now, when we talk about blood flow, we're not just talking about the big arteries. We're talking about microscopic vessels, a vast, delicate network of capillaries that deliver oxygen and nutrients to every corner of your brain. These vessels are so tiny, they're almost invisible. But they're everything. Without them, your brain cells begin to starve. They struggle, they misfire, and eventually, they die. This is where high blood pressure becomes a silent enemy. Unlike the sudden drama of a stroke, high blood pressure damages the brain quietly, year after year. It exerts constant force against those tiny blood vessels, weakening their walls, thickening them, making them less flexible. Over time, this leads to something called microvascular damage, small, repeated injuries that interrupt blood supply to critical areas of the brain. And here's the part many people don't realize. Not all dementia is Alzheimer's. There's a type called vascular dementia, and it doesn't always come with plaques or tangles. It comes from poor blood flow. Death by 1,000 cuts. And it's far more common than most think, especially in people with untreated or poorly managed high blood pressure. Let me tell you about Margaret. She's 72, a retired bookkeeper who had always prided herself on staying organized, paying bills on time, remembering birthdays, keeping track of every detail in the household. Over the past year, things started to change. She began forgetting names, losing her train of thought mid-sentence, even mixing up her medications. Her doctor first suspected early Alzheimer's, but after a few tests, including imaging and blood work, they realized something else. Her blood pressure, long ignored because she felt fine, had been slowly rising for years. The damage was there: tiny strokes, reduced blood flow, early vascular deterioration. Margaret didn't have Alzheimer's. She had microvascular dementia, and the cause was something no one had paid attention to. Not until it was too late. This is why managing blood pressure isn't just about avoiding heart attacks. It's about preserving the part of you that holds your memories, your personality, your independence. And the good news? You have more control over that than you think. Let's dive into number 2, the 34,000-person study. What it really revealed. Not long ago, in the quiet, rural villages of China, a team of researchers launched what would become one of the most eye-opening dementia studies in recent memory. They weren't looking at genetics. They weren't studying supplements or high-tech scans. They were testing something much simpler and much more powerful. They asked, what if we could lower blood pressure early and consistently? Would it protect the brain? To find out, they gathered a group of over 34,000 adults, all over the age of 40, and all with one thing in common: high blood pressure. Half of the group received standard care, the same kind of blood pressure advice and medication adjustments you might expect at a routine clinic. But the other half? They were given a more aggressive treatment plan, one focused on bringing their systolic blood pressure below 130 and keeping it there. What they found over just 4 years was nothing short of extraordinary. The group with lower blood pressure didn't just feel better. They didn't just avoid heart problems. They had a 15% lower risk of developing dementia. Think about that for a moment. No special supplements, no expensive procedures, just one strategic focus: keeping blood pressure in a healthy range. And the reward? A brain that stays clearer, stronger, more intact, longer. Now here's the part that really matters. That 15% reduction was measured over just 4 years. But dementia doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow build of tiny insults, years, sometimes decades in the making. Which means that if lowering blood pressure by 30 points can make such a difference in just 4 years, starting earlier could offer even greater protection. It could be the difference between remembering your grandchildren's names at 85 or struggling to recognize the faces around you. But before you rush to adjust your blood pressure medications or set new goals on your own, here's an important caveat. This must be done with medical supervision. Why? Because for some older adults, especially those already on multiple medications or who have underlying conditions, lowering blood pressure too quickly or too far can cause dizziness, lightheadedness, even dangerous falls. It's not just about getting the number down. It's about how you do it and how your body responds along the way. So, if you're watching this and thinking, maybe it's time to take my blood pressure more seriously, you're right. But don't go it alone. Partner with a doctor who understands your whole health picture. Because when it comes to your brain, every step you take in the right direction matters. And speaking of direction, let's move to number 3, because this next part challenges one of the most common beliefs seniors have heard for decades. For years, we were told that a blood pressure reading of 140/90 was perfectly acceptable. Normal for your age, some doctors would say. Maybe you've even heard that yourself. You check your numbers at the pharmacy, see a 138, and feel a wave of relief. Well, at least it's under 140. But what if I told you that number, the one we've long accepted as safe, is not safe at all? Enter the SPRINT study, a massive trial involving over 9,000 people that flipped decades of medical advice on its head. This wasn't just a small, observational study. This was the kind of gold standard research that forces entire health systems to rethink their guidelines. The goal? To see whether aiming for a lower systolic blood pressure, below 120, would actually reduce the risk of heart attacks, strokes, and death, compared to the traditional target of 140. And the results? So clear, so dramatic, that researchers had to stop the study early. Participants aiming for 120 didn't just see minor improvements. They had a 27% lower risk of heart attack, stroke, or death from cardiovascular causes. And when it came to overall mortality, a 25% drop in the risk of dying from any cause, just from bringing their blood pressure below 120. Now, a follow-up study conducted in China took it even further, testing this more aggressive target in over 11,000 people, many of whom had diabetes or had already experienced strokes. Even in this higher risk group, lowering blood pressure under 120 led to a 21% reduction in death rates and significant protection from heart and brain damage. So what does all this mean for you? It means that 130 is no longer the gold standard. It's a stopgap, a temporary checkpoint, not the final destination. Because the true protection, especially for your brain, comes when systolic blood pressure is consistently under 120. Why? Because your brain is like a sponge, dense with nerves, delicate vessels, and electrical signals. And like any sponge, it performs best in a gentle environment. Apply too much pressure, and it doesn't function better. It starts to collapse. Blood vessels inside the brain aren't made of iron. They're more like soft tubes, and sustained pressure, especially over 120, starts to damage them from the inside out. Over time, that damage doesn't just raise your risk of stroke, it quietly chips away at your ability to think, remember, and feel like yourself. So if you've been coasting with a reading of 135 and thinking, close enough, I urge you to reconsider, not because of fear, but because now you know better. And knowing gives you power. And now that we understand why the number on the blood pressure cuff matters more than ever, Let's dive into number 4. Because this next truth may shock you. It's not just about preventing strokes or heart attacks. It's about something much more personal. Your memories, your clarity, your ability to think and speak with ease. This is the dementia-blood pressure connection you've never heard about. For decades, doctors saw heart disease and dementia as separate issues. One was a vascular problem, the other a cognitive one. But now, emerging science reveals a chilling link. High blood pressure doesn't just affect your heart. It slowly sabotages your brain. Here's how it works. When your blood pressure is too high, your blood vessels, the tiny, delicate ones deep inside your brain, are under constant stress. Like a garden hose turned up too strong, those vessels begin to stiffen, scar, and shrink. Over time, this restricts oxygen and nutrient delivery to the very neurons that handle memory, emotion, coordination, and language. That damage doesn't cause immediate pain, but it leaves a trace, one forgotten name or misplaced sentence at a time. And here's the part no one talks about: oxidative stress. When blood pressure rises, it sets off an inflammatory chain reaction inside your blood vessels. Free radicals flood the system, breaking down the protective lining of your vessels and even breaching your blood-brain barrier, the brain's natural shield. That barrier is supposed to filter out toxins and protect your neurons. But under chronic pressure, it becomes leaky, porous, and vulnerable. What happens next? Brain fog. Word-finding difficulty. That moment when you walk into a room and forget why. When conversations blur and focus fades. It's subtle at first, but left unchecked, these are the early steps on the road to vascular dementia. One of my mentors, a brilliant neurologist, once told me, "Every heartbeat that's too strong is a tiny injury to the brain. You won't feel it today, but years from now, you'll wish you could go back and protect the vessel before it burst." This isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to empower you. Because blood pressure is one of the few major dementia risk factors that we can actually control, if we act now. Now that we understand how elevated blood pressure silently erodes the brain, you might be wondering, what can I actually do about it? Because the truth is, not everyone wants or needs to jump to medication right away. And here's the good news. Your daily habits are more powerful than any pill, especially when it comes to blood pressure and brain protection. So let's move to number 5, lifestyle first. 5 changes that lower blood pressure and protect the brain. Let's begin with salt. Most of us have heard it before. Cutting back on salt is key. But let's make it visual. Imagine your blood vessels as soft balloons. The more salt you eat, the more your body retains fluid. And the more fluid in your vessels, the tighter the balloon stretches. Over time, those vessels lose their flexibility, and the pressure builds. That's why reducing sodium intake to under 1,500 milligrams a day, about half a teaspoon, can have profound effects. But here's a smarter swap. Potassium-based salt substitutes, which replace some of the sodium with potassium chloride, are now clinically shown to lower blood pressure and stroke risk. It's a small change with a big payoff, especially if you're over 60. Now let's talk about food more broadly. One of the most evidence-backed dietary patterns for heart and brain health is the DASH diet, short for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. And no, it's not restrictive or complicated. It simply means eating more fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, and low-fat dairy, while minimizing sweets and fatty meats. Think a grilled salmon salad with olive oil, a bowl of oats topped with blueberries, or roasted sweet potatoes with a side of steamed greens. That's DASH, and that's doable. And if the idea of exercise sounds overwhelming, let me introduce you to one of my favorite approaches for busy patients: exercise snacks. These are small bursts of activity, sprinkled throughout your day, like doing wall squats during a coffee break, marching in place while watching the news, or stretching after brushing your teeth. Just 2 to 3 minutes, repeated a few times a day, can lower systolic blood pressure and improve circulation. Think of it as micro-movement with macro impact. But movement alone isn't enough. Weight management also plays a crucial role. The data is clear. Even losing 5 to 10 pounds can significantly drop your blood pressure. Why? Because carrying extra weight, especially around the midsection, makes your heart work harder, compresses vessels, and throws your hormonal balance off track. But here's the key. You don't need to aim for a perfect number. Just a steady, gentle shift in the right direction changes everything. And finally, stress and sleep. Two sides of the same coin. Chronic stress keeps your cortisol levels high, which tightens blood vessels and floods your brain with inflammatory chemicals. Poor sleep does the same. Over time, both steal your clarity, weaken your memory, and strain your heart. That's why restorative sleep and daily moments of calm, even just 5 deep breaths between tasks, aren't luxuries. They're your brain's daily repair tool. I had a patient named Frank, 66 years old. He was sharp, funny, full of life. But he started noticing his mind wasn't as clear. Names slipped. Words took longer to come. His blood pressure was hovering around 138. Not high enough to panic, but high enough to chip away silently. Together, we adjusted his diet, added 10-minute walks after lunch, swapped his table salt, and built a simple bedtime routine. 3 months later, his blood pressure dropped to 122. More importantly, he told me, "It feels like someone opened the curtains in my brain." That's the power of lifestyle. That's the power you hold. You've now seen how salt, food, movement, and stress management form the foundation of brain and blood pressure health. But there's one more piece to this puzzle, one that often gets overlooked, yet may be the most powerful of all. Let's dive into number 6, the sleep, blood pressure, memory triangle. Think of your brain as a city. During the day, it's busy, neurons firing, thoughts racing, decisions being made. And just like any city, that activity creates waste, metabolic debris that clutters the streets of your mind. Now here's the thing. Your brain doesn't have a typical lymphatic system like the rest of your body. Instead, it relies on something even more specialized, the glymphatic system. The glymphatic system is like the night crew sweeping through your brain while you sleep, clearing out toxic proteins, especially beta amyloid, the same sticky substance implicated in Alzheimer's disease. But this cleanup crew only shows up during deep sleep, and only if your nighttime blood pressure dips the way it's supposed to. Here's where it gets concerning. If your blood pressure stays too high during the night, a condition called non-dipping hypertension, this process is disrupted. The glymphatic system doesn't activate fully. The toxins don't get cleared. And what's left behind are small insults, tiny bits of waste that quietly erode memory, focus, and mood over time. Now combine that with poor sleep, light, fragmented, anxious, and you've got a double hit. The blood vessels stay tense, the brain stays inflamed, and over time, memory loss accelerates. That's why optimizing sleep isn't just about rest, it's about rebuilding your brain and protecting your cognition. So how do you support this triangle naturally? Start with a simple bedtime ritual. Something that tells your body, it's safe to power down now. This might mean a cup of chamomile tea or tart cherry juice, both shown to help with sleep and lower evening blood pressure. Dimming the lights an hour before bed to reset your melatonin production. Turning off news and screens to calm the nervous system. Taking a short walk after dinner, which not only supports digestion, but gently lowers blood pressure. Even just one soft-boiled egg or a handful of walnuts in the evening has been shown to stabilize blood sugar and promote deeper sleep, both of which contribute to better nighttime blood pressure regulation. I once worked with a retired nurse named Evelyn, age 73. She wasn't sleeping well and had mild cognitive fog. Her nighttime blood pressure readings were above 135, higher than ideal. We didn't start with pills. We started with a 15-minute wind-down routine, breathing exercises, a magnesium-rich dinner, and a screen-free bedroom. Within weeks, her sleep deepened, and so did her clarity. Remember, your brain isn't just storing memories. It's cleaning them while you rest, and your blood pressure is the faucet that controls that flow. Now that you understand how sleep, pressure, and brain health form a triangle of protection, it's time to zoom out, to look not just at what happens in the next month, but in the next decade. Let's move into number 7. Early intervention equals exponential results. There's something powerful that happens when you take action before things get bad. Not just because you prevent damage, but because you stop the damage from ever beginning in the first place. Think of it like this. Imagine a piece of metal, your brain. Every day that high blood pressure goes unchecked is like a droplet of water landing on that metal. It doesn't seem like much at first. A tiny bit of stress, a flicker of forgetfulness, one skipped night of deep sleep. But let that water sit there for weeks, months, years, and it becomes rust. Let it go even longer. That rust eats through the metal. That's what happens in the brain. And that's why starting now, no matter your age, isn't just helpful. It's transformative. Let's revisit the study we discussed earlier. A 15% reduction in dementia risk over just 4 years by getting blood pressure below 130. Now imagine if you start this process not at 72, but at 58, or 60, or even 65. That 15% doesn't just stay steady, it compounds. Neuroscientists now believe that early and sustained pressure control may lower lifetime dementia risk by 30%, 40%, even more, especially when combined with lifestyle upgrades like exercise, food, and stress management. That brings us to Lena. Lena is 58 years old, a retired librarian, A quiet woman who never liked gyms or diets. But she did one thing. She took her blood pressure seriously when it hit 135. Not panic, just curiosity. She changed her salt habits, joined a walking group, and made sleep her nightly ritual. Now, 5 years later, Lena doesn't just feel better. She's become a mentor at her community center, guiding other seniors through the very changes she once feared. "I'm not a doctor," she laughs, "but I have my clarity back, and I'll fight to keep it." That's the power of early intervention. It's not about fixing what's broken. It's about protecting what still works beautifully. And your brain, right now, is still capable of resilience, repair, and renewal. So whether you're 58, 68, or even 78, remember this: the earlier you act, the more your efforts multiply. Because dementia isn't just something that happens. In many cases, it's something that builds slowly, silently, and preventably. If there's one truth I want you to carry with you, it's this: it's never too late to start. Whether you're already managing high blood pressure or just beginning to think more deeply about your health, know this: every single step you take toward protecting your brain matters. Every healthy habit, every night of good sleep, every morning walk or sodium swap or blood pressure check-in, it all adds up, because your brain is not a lost cause. It's not set in stone. It's a living, adapting organ, ready to heal, ready to rebuild, ready to reward you for taking care of it. So let's recap what we've learned today. Lowering your blood pressure below 130, or better yet, toward 120, isn't just a heart health strategy. It's a powerful way to protect your memory, clarity, and quality of life. You've learned how dementia risk can drop by 15% in just 4 years. You've discovered the link between blood vessel health and brain fog, between sleep and cognitive repair, between simple daily habits and long-term mental resilience. You've seen the stories: Margaret, who reversed early memory loss; Frank, who regained clarity; Lena, who became a mentor to others. Now it's your turn. Comment below with your current blood pressure, or the one thing you're committing to this week. Whether it's a lower salt goal, a sleep routine, or finally getting that checkup. Let's build a community of accountability and encouragement right here. And if this video gave you insight, hope, or a new perspective, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to Be Healthy Seniors, where aging doesn't mean decline, it means empowerment. Because you're not just protecting your brain, you're protecting your future. And that future still holds clarity, joy, and strength. One choice, one breath, one heartbeat at a time.